everyone. Welcome to Sunday School class with Ricky. If you are joining for the first time, welcome to this class. We trust that you will be pleased to stay with us and continue as we go through our studies. If you are returning, welcome back. We have been going through a series on the missionary journeys found in the book of Acts, often referred to as Paul's missionary journeys, and there are 3 of them. We are currently on the 3rd and final missionary journey, and so we'll be coming to the end of this series very soon. Before we go on, I just want to remind you, if you can please subscribe, like the video, and share. We would really appreciate that to get this video out to as many people as possible. In our last class, we left Paul in the city of Ephesus, and there he was ministering and preaching for about 2 to 3 years. And just as we closed, he was preparing to leave the city to continue his journey. But his departure was somewhat delayed by events that took place very shortly thereafter, and we'll be covering those events today. Now, what happened was that there was an uproar in the city caused by a man, instigated by a man called Demetrius, who was a silversmith. So he made silver shrines or images to the goddess Artemis or Diana. And this was a very profitable business for him and his colleagues, because Artemis was worshipped in Ephesus, and there was a great temple to Artemis built in Ephesus, which of course encouraged the sale of these shrines and these little objects. So this temple, we're going to speak a bit about it today. And the temple at Artemis, also known as the temple at Diana, Diana being the Roman version of the Greek name Artemis. But this temple was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So we'll speak about the temple a little bit, and in fact, we'll speak about those 7 wonders of the ancient world. So let's have a brief look at the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So if you were to go on Google or look up any reference to the 7 wonders of the ancient world, you will get this list of locations that I'm about to present to you. One brief caveat, though, we should say, is that this really is the list of the wonders of the ancient Greek world, because these are constructions, locations that were known in the Greek world because of people traveling through that part of the world. No doubt there were other impressive structures in other parts of the world, possibly Africa, China, maybe North America. So there probably were structures in those locations that would also have been reckoned or considered to be wonders, but of course they were not recorded anywhere. So we have the 7 wonders of the ancient Greek world. But let's talk about them for a few minutes. First of all, the Great Pyramid at Giza in Egypt, probably one of the most famous. This was built in approximately 2600 BC. It is still standing today as we record this video. And in fact, it is the only of the 7 wonders that remains standing today. So it's over almost 5,000 years old and still standing. That's quite impressive. If you don't live in Egypt, you could buy a ticket, catch a plane, and go to Egypt today and view the Great Pyramid at Giza. Quite impressive, but it's the only one that is still standing. Secondly, we have the Colossus of Rhodes. The Colossus of Rhodes was a statue of the Greek god, the Greek sun god Helios, which was erected at the port of a city called Rhodes in a Greek island also called Rhodes. This statue was erected around 280 BC, but it collapsed during an earthquake during the earthquake of 226 BC, so it's no longer standing. Thirdly, we come to the lighthouse of Alexandria also in Egypt, also known as the Pharos of Alexandria, because the word Pharos, from which we get the word Pharaoh, means light bearer or light. So lighthouse, the Pharos of Alexandria, the lighthouse of Alexandria. This was built by the Ptolemaic kingdom in ancient Egypt during the reign of Ptolemy II Philadelphus. He reigned from 280 to 247 BC. It has been estimated that this lighthouse was at least 100 meters tall, that's about 330 feet in overall height. But this too was damaged by earthquakes between 956 and 1303 AD, and it has become an abandoned ruin. The mausoleum at Halicarnassus. This was a tomb built by a man called Mausolus for himself and his wife at a place called Halicarnassus, which is present-day Bodrum in Turkey. And it was built between 353 and 351 BC. This too was destroyed by successive earthquakes from the 12th to the 15th century. But of course, the word now mausoleum has come to mean any tomb that is constructed above ground, named after Mausolus, who built this mausoleum at Halicarnassus. Next, we come to the statue of Zeus at Olympia, or at Mount Olympus. And this was a giant seated statue of the god Zeus. It was constructed around 435 BC in the sanctuary of Olympia in Greece. And it was erected in the temple of Zeus there. The statue was lost and destroyed sometime before the end of the 6th century. We don't exactly know what happened. Probably there were the armies that invaded around the time, probably destroyed it, but it was lost, and there are conflicting stories as to how, to the date and the circumstances of how it was destroyed. But again, this too no longer exists. And then we come to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, probably one of the more famous of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were described as a remarkable feat of engineering with an ascending series of tiered gardens containing a wide variety of trees, shrubs, and vines. And essentially it resembled a large green mountain constructed with mud bricks. It supposedly was built by King Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled from between 605 to 562 BC. And he built it for his Median wife, who apparently missed all the nice, luxurious foliage in her home city of Midian. The Hanging Gardens is really the only one of the 7 wonders whose location has never been definitively established. In fact, we don't even actually know whether or not they actually ever existed, because there's no archaeological evidence for them. However, a number of writers writing in those times did describe such gardens, but we don't know where they were, if at all they existed. And of course, the last of the 7 wonders of the world is the subject of our discussion today, the Temple of Artemis, or the Temple of Diana at Ephesus. The Temple of Artemis was a Greek temple dedicated to the ancient goddess Artemis, again equated to the Roman goddess Diana. It was located in Ephesus, near the modern town of Selçuk in present-day Turkey. It was first built in the 7th century BC, but that version of the temple was destroyed by a flood. It was later reconstructed in a more grandiose form beginning around 550 BC. Now this construction was funded by Croesus of Lydia. You may have heard of Croesus, an extremely wealthy man, wealthy king of Lydia. There's an expression, you may have heard it, where people talk about the wealth of Croesus to indicate someone who is extremely wealthy. This is the guy, Croesus. And he funded the rebuilding of what they call the second temple to Diana, and it took 10 years to complete. Croesus is a very interesting person. There's a very interesting story about him, which hopefully one day will work into one of our classes God willing. However, the temple that he built, that he funded, was, they said, the second one, and it was the first temple that was built of marble, the first Greek temple that was built of marble. Now, this version of the temple was destroyed in 356 BC by an arsonist, which is also another interesting story, but we'll forego that at this time. So that temple was also destroyed. But then the next, the greatest, and the most impressive form of the temple was rebuilt, and that was funded by the Ephesians themselves. Alexander the Great had actually, at the time, offered to rebuild the temple for them, but they politely declined. Very wisely and politically, they said, Alexander, it is not fit for one God to build the temple of another God. So they were very flattering in their response, but essentially they didn't want him to fund it. They wanted to fund it themselves, and so he allowed them to do that. And they did that. This was the most grand of the versions of this temple, and this will be the one that will be standing when Paul visited in around 51 or 52 AD. However, by 401 AD, this temple too had been ruined or destroyed. And today, only the foundations and fragments of this last temple remain at the site. There is one legendary story about this temple, and I emphasize it's only a legendary story. It's only a legend. We don't know if it is actually true. It's probably not true. However, it is a story that is well circulated. And it says that the Apostle John prayed publicly in the temple of Artemis. And he went there and he prayed and he exorcised its demons. And we're told, the story goes, that all of a sudden the temple of Artemis split in many pieces and half the temple fell down, instantly converting many of the Ephesians to Christianity. Many of them prayed and wept and took flight. That's a legendary story. We don't know if it's true, but that is the temple at Ephesus, and those are the 7 wonders of the ancient world. And now, as we said earlier, Paul was getting ready to depart from Ephesus. So let's go back to Paul and to his story. As he was getting ready to leave, an uproar came up in Ephesus, caused by, as I said earlier, a man called Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen who were silversmiths. Now, this uproar was caused more for commercial interests rather than religious purposes. Paul was going around saying that there were no gods made with men's hands. Demetrius, his business was selling gods made with men's hands. So you can see the conflict here. I'm going to read what is found in Acts chapter 19 from verses 25 to 27. It says there, speaking about Demetrius and how he started the whole uproar. These he gathered together with the workers of the same trade and said, "Men, you know that we get our wealth from this business. You also see and hear that not only in Ephesus, but in almost the whole of Asia, this Paul hath persuaded and drawn away a considerable number of people by saying that gods made with hands are not gods. And there is danger not only that this trade of ours may come into disrepute, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be scorned, and she will be deprived of her majesty that brought all Asia and the world to worship her." That's the New Revised Standard Version. And of course, yeah, sure, Demetrius, you're really concerned about Artemis and her majesty being deprived. Yeah, we know that. Of course not. He was interested in making money and losing his business. And so as a result of this, there's a whole uproar in the city. A crowd starts to form, a mob starts to gather, and there's a whole sort of confusion. We learn here for the first time the names of 2 of Paul's traveling companions at this time. We're told about Gaius and Aristarchus of Macedonia. There were some other names who were mentioned later that we'll mention. But these two apparently were there, and they were held onto by the crowd and dragged into the theater. Paul himself was not able to go into the theater, although he wanted to. He wanted to go along with his companions to kind of support them and so on and get them out of trouble. But he was not allowed. The other Christians there did not allow him to go into the theater for fear of his life. But there's an uproar. There's confusion. There's a mob. And people are getting carried away, as mobs tend to do. And they're all shouting one thing, and these people shouting something else. Contrary things they're shouting. And then this continues for a while. And then we're told for the space of 2 hours, they started shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." Or the King James will say, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." And this continued for 2 hours. You can imagine that, people shouting this one thing for over 2 hours. And this continued, and we now look as though we're going to have a full-scale riot. We're going to have some destruction. We're going to have people, potentially lives being taken because this crowd is getting out of control. And then a man steps in. We're told the town clerk comes and he intervenes. And he speaks to the people in apparently a very calm and logical and sensible manner. And he says the following. He told them, first of all, that the crowd, that your crowd, must not do anything hasty or rash. Further, he argued that Paul and his companions were neither temple robbers nor blasphemers. They didn't commit anything, any crime. They didn't rob the temple. They didn't blaspheme against the goddess Diana. They're not. He said that if Demetrius and his colleagues had a complaint, then they should follow the rule of law and raise the matter in civil court. In other words, here we do things decently and in order. You got a complaint, the decent thing to do, the right thing to do, take it to the courts and file a complaint. And he said to them, bad behavior and rioting cannot be justified nor tolerated. He didn't issue any threats. He didn't, said he's going to call out the police. He's going to call the army. Nothing like that. He just told them, your rioting cannot be justified or tolerated. And he then dismissed the assembly. And apparently, they went. They heeded him and they went their way. So quite a sensible sounding person this man was. And because of his intervention, we would think that, rioting was averted. Potentially he saved people's lives. Potentially he prevented the destruction of property because he kept the crowd calm and then dismissed them peacefully. Now he's one of those persons mentioned in the Bible who, we don't know his name, but he acted sensibly and nobly in that particular circumstance. Now we don't know if Demetrius and his associates ever attempted to bring a civil case against Paul. It seems very unlikely because they really had no case. But Paul says he's going to leave Ephesus at this time. So now Paul leaves Ephesus and he went back through the Macedonian cities, we're told, and these will be the ones that we encountered on the second journey, Philippi, Berea, Thessalonica. So he went back through those cities, no doubt encouraging the believers in the churches there. And eventually he arrives in Greece. And we're told, he spends 3 months there in Greece. As has happened before, there was discovered a plot by the Jews to kill Paul. Because Paul apparently had planned to get aboard a ship in Corinth and set sail to Jerusalem via Syria. But again, this intelligence revealed to him that there was a plot afoot to waylay and to assault him on the way to the voyage. So he decided to go by land instead through Macedonia. It's at this point that we are told who Paul's companions were. There are a few of them, almost 7 of them. And we're given their names: Sopater of Berea, Aristarchus and Secundus of the Thessalonians, Gaius of Derbe, Timothy of Lystra/Derbe, Tychicus and Trophimus of Asia. So 7 persons in all. So quite a big group to be traveling together. And these men, they went ahead of Paul. And it's here we see again the change in the narration by the writer. Changes from them and they to us and we. So this is again another one of those passages that the scholars refer to as the we passages in Acts. So we believe this is Luke writing. So the 7 others went ahead to Troas to await Paul and Luke to get there, to arrive there, and eventually Paul and Luke do arrive there and join them in Troas, and they're there for 5 days. So at this point we'll stop the journey and pick it back up again in our next class. So what is our challenge for today? When I started to prepare this particular lesson, my intention was to give a challenge based on something to do with the wonder, because of obviously the wonder of the world, the temple and the 7 wonders of the world. I was going to use that to give my challenge. The wonder of salvation, the wonder of the gospel, along those lines. But as I read through the story, I just became more and more impressed by someone mentioned in the story. Someone who's mentioned there, whose name we don't even know. We're just told he was the town clerk. And I was very impressed by this person and figured I would use him instead for our challenge today. Because here's a man, again, we don't even know his name, but by his actions, he did something that was right in the circumstance he was in. There's no indication that he was a Christian or a follower of Paul. He was just a man who was in a situation and decided that he was going to do the right thing. He could have joined in with the others and said, let's persecute these troublesome people who are coming here causing trouble, these troublesome Christians who were here causing trouble. He could have done that, but he chose to be on the right side. And again, we don't know his name, we don't know, who he was, we don't know what happened to him after that. But in that circumstance, in that situation, we know that he did the right thing. And he took a stand to be on the right side of history. Very often, we as Christians today find ourselves in situations. And we have to make quick decisions as to what we're going to do. I want to encourage you, make sure that you take a stand and stand for that which is right. Now, it's easy to go along with the crowd sometimes. It's easy to keep your head down. It's easy to go and join with persons who you think might be powerful, might benefit you in some way in the future. Even though those persons are going the wrong way, or doing the wrong things, or saying the wrong things. But you can do like this town clerk. Make the decision to stand on the right side. Make the right and the righteous decision. And do that which you know would please God. And that's my challenge. Stay and stand on the right side. As always, I want to encourage you, if you're not a Christian, trust in the Lord Jesus and become a Christian. Follow him. That's what he wants for you. That's the right decision for you at this time. Fellow Christians, stay on the right side. My friends, we come to almost to the end of our series. Next class, God willing, will be our final in this series. And we're going to end the 3rd missionary journey with Paul finally arriving in Jerusalem. And we'll end the series at that point. So look forward to seeing you for our next class. Until then, God bless you.